While a lot's been made about players that could be moved around the draft, like Kevin Durant and Ace Bailey and his potential to slip in the draft, let's talk about other teams that could potentially be looking to move up in the draft and some of the players that could actually start surprising per their draft stock. We're talking a lot about the NBA draft today, a little bit about Kevin Durant. We're going to get to all that and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host, Sarah Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And the NBA has made their green room finalized. We now know the players that are going to be in the NBA green room. And this is not the end all be all, right? I want to be clear. This does not mean any indication that these are the only players that could be drafted. There's sometimes players that aren't in the green room that end up getting drafted much higher than expected. But let's go over the list of names, not those surprising ones. Of course, Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, Trey Johnson, Kaman Malawak, Kon Knuppel, Kasparas Jonkachūnas, Igor Dimon, Jeremiah Fierce, Carter Bryant, Derek Queen, Asa Newell, Noah Esingay, I believe is how you pronounce it, Colin Murray Boyles, Thomas Sorber, Liam McNeely, Nolan Traore, Will Riley, Juan Baringer, Nick Clifford, Walter Clayton, Danny Wolf, and Cedric Coward. I do think that Will Riley, Cedric Coward may be two of the more surprising names on this list based off where they were pre-draft. After the draft combine, it all started looking like that. Surprisingly enough, Jace Richardson is not on this list. Maxime Renaud is another player as well that I thought would be on this list as far as green room invites when it all came down to it, but they're not. And this NBA draft is going to be, I think, a really exciting one. I do think with the I once said that you probably won't see much movement around this NBA draft until maybe after pick 8, somewhere in there on down, you could see a lot of movement. But with everything going on with Ace Bailey, depending on how far he could slide, Jake Fisher was on Bleacher Report yesterday in which he said that he feels that there's a chance that Ace Bailey could fall as low as number 6 in this draft. When you pair this with Matt Moore from the Action Network, who said that he's heard that Ace Bailey could fall as low as 10th, it could be a nice fall for Ace Bailey if a team does not trade up to get him done. The question is how much is a team going to be willing to invest to move up to get Ace Bailey once they see him start falling? That's a story for another day. We'll cover that, of course, while the NBA draft is going on, but there's tons of questions on what this is going to look like, right, for these teams, what this is going to look like in this draft. And, you have the Kevin Durant stuff, which the Phoenix Suns came out and said that they're hopeful that they can get a big move into this draft. They are hopeful and optimistic that they can make a move in a trade, get a Kevin Durant trade done before the draft, and then thus end up with a draft pick in this draft, right? And so I think a lot of this could go a little bored, but really I think after pick, which, even Tankathon now has Ace Bailey going 5th to the Utah Jazz, falling down, right? But I really think that after pick number 3, and maybe even before then, depending on trades and things that could happen, there could be a lot of movement in this draft, And so when you pair that with already hearing that, teams like the Thunder are looking to move up, the Nets are expected to trade up in this draft as well. Brooklyn, who has 8, 19, 26, and 27, they have a lot of potential of trading up in this draft if they decide to do so. And maybe they are a team that could try to trade up for Ace Bailey with number 8, with number 19. We could see what happens there. But when you look at it, the Thunder, the Jazz, the Atlanta Hawks, the New Orleans Pelicans, per Brett Siegel, these are the teams that are also the most teams that are involved in trade talks to move up in the NBA draft right now. And these are all teams that I think have multiple first-round picks in this draft as well, saying this. Along with the Nets, who own 19th, 26th, 27th, there are some teams outside the lottery that are expected to move up in the draft. The Oklahoma City Thunder with 15 and 24, the Utah Jazz at 21, the Atlanta Hawks at 22, and the Pelicans at 23 are the 4 most discussed teams next to Brooklyn as the most likely to try to trade up from their spots in the 20s, depending on which prospects fall in and out of the lottery. And that's the thing, something that makes sense with there, right? And then he says, then on the back end of the top 10, the Raptors with the 9th pick and the Rockets with the 10th pick, these are 2 teams involved in the Durant trade sweepstakes, and both organizations have been involved in trade talks outside of the star forward, sources have said. So let's take a look at this, right? Which of the prospects in this NBA draft are most likely, let's not say most likely, but have a chance to fall out into the lottery, right? And I think that that you look at a player like Kaman, he's a player that anywhere that you read that he can go anywhere between as high as like number 6 down all the way to 12 to the Bulls or some mocks have him at. I heard recently that he has a promise in the top 8 is something that I've heard. So just take that with a grain of salt. Not saying that that's a guaranteed facts there. But when you look at when you compare this with the green room, right? Jace Richardson, a player that has been mocked to go around the 12 to 15 range. Him not being in the green room, to me, says that maybe the NBA has some solid feeling that he may be a player that falls outside of that lottery. And listen, while he does have some big limitations, make no mistake about it, I think that if Jace Richardson falls outside of the lottery, a team's going to get a hell of a player there. I think that Jace may be a little bit limited in what his role is at the next level, but I don't think many people doubt that he's going to be able to score at the next level. It's just, how much he's going to be able to score is the question. The 17 points per game that he had last season, is he going to be able to replicate that in the NBA? He's undersized. Those are things that definitely play a part in how all this goes. But I think Jace Richardson does have a big chance to fall outside of the lottery in this draft when you kind of put all the rumors together. I think a player as well like Juan Baringer as well. I know he's going to be in the green room, which that's not all lottery picks. Keep in mind that does go. There's over 20 players that are in there. I think that he's another player that I could see going towards the end of the lottery, but him also falling out of the lottery in a team with his upside, his legit size at 6'10", the over 7-foot wingspan, the shot blocking ability, the rim running ability, the athleticism, that a team definitely could try to take a shot on him as well. And a player that I think is going to provide tremendous value if they fall outside the lottery. And depending on how you look at mocks, like the Ringer has him going 11th, some other ones have him going outside. Danny Wolf. Danny Wolf is one of the more slept on prospects, I feel, in this draft. And that's because, I think the things that he does well, he makes look seamless. And he's not like the player that has the most athleticism or anything like that. But I think he brings a nice combination of ability to score at a lot of different levels. I won't necessarily call him a 3-level scorer, but he can make a 3-point shot. He can put the ball on the floor. He has really nice footwork when it comes down to those type of things. And he's a really solid passer. Defensively, I think that he gives effort defensively. I don't know how much of an on-ball defender he's going to be at the next level, but I can see Danny Wolf absolutely. If he falls outside that lottery, I think that he's going to be a player that people love getting when it all comes down to that. Look out for him there. Rasheer Felming is one of the more interesting prospects that I am to see where he goes, because I think that Rasheer has tremendous upside. And I feel like people doubt him because they from my conversations with people, it's like people view him as this older prospect. I'm like, he's not that old. Like Cedric Coward is considerably older than him when it all shakes out. It's like people have this doubt about Rasheer Felming for some reason. And I, for one, I don't understand it. I think that Rasheer Felming offers tremendous defensive upside, crazy reach when it comes down to it as well. I think his ability to stretch the floor and block shots are all things that are going to really pay off really well for him at the next level in the NBA. And Rasheer Felming is somebody that I think if he falls outside of the lottery and you get Rasheer Felming in the 20s, and with him not even being in the green room as well, if you can get Rasheer Felming in this draft, I look at it and I say, hey man, listen, you probably got yourself a player that could very well end up turning into a lottery level pick in this draft that I think people are really sleeping on Rasheer Felming in this draft. And he's somebody who's not getting a lot of talk about, but I feel like everybody who watches his tape fan-wise, of course, I don't know what the experts are thinking, that sees Rasheer Fleming's game, they recognize him like really good size. I get it that maybe he's a little bit slow-footed, that people can consider that, but I think he's really good defender, really good rim protector as well, really solid rebounding as far as the rebounding rate that you're going to see with him. Rasheer Felming could be one of the biggest sleepers, I feel like, in this draft, and I just don't think he's getting enough talk about. I look, for example, I look at a player like Asa Newell, and Asa Newell has so much potential defensively, switching-wise, and all those type of things, but the size is a bit of a concern. With the wingspan, all that is a bit of a concern with Rasheer. With Asa, I think Rasheer has more of a wingspan. He's around the same height, a little, I think like an inch shorter. And I think that he has just as much ability to stretch the floor potentially as an Asa Newell, but we'll see what happens there. But again, I'm not saying that he should be as high as Asa. Some mocks have Asa falling outside the lottery too. But I just look at Rasheer Felming, and this is a guy that I think has really good upside in this draft when it's all said and done as well. And then Maxime Reynaud, I'm going to be interested to see where he goes, because if he falls sub 20 And teams are willing to invest in what he can be. Legit size at 7'1", legit wingspan. He has really good ability to put the ball on the floor when it comes down to it as well. Like, I think that he has a lot of potential there when it comes down to it. And Maxime is a player that if he goes, like I said, if he goes sub 25, like some mocks have him going, I think you're going to get yourself a hell of a player when that's all said and done. Will Riley is another one that I really like. If you can't tell, I'm an Illinois guy, so I try not to talk too much about my fellow Illini people, but I think that he's another guy that you can get really good value out of that, where he's going to be picked at. He's another sleeper in this draft, if you ask me, in my personal opinion. So we'll see what happens in this. The Derek Queen is an interesting conversation in this draft too. I think, I think he's going to fall lower than what some people had him expected pre the draft process, but I think he's still going to probably go top 10, top 12, and he should. Derek Queen is going to be a really good player in the NBA. I think he's going to be a unique player, and therefore it's kind of hard to project him and what he's going to be. An undersized center, but a tough son of a bitch that I think is going to get it done. I think he's going to really help people. But then one of my biggest sleepers in this draft, and this is a guy that I watched a lot of tape on coming into this draft. Most have him going in the top of the second round. Hugo Gonzalez out of Spain, 6'6", international prospect. I'm telling y'all right now, do not be surprised if Hugo Gonzalez ends up being a really solid player and having a very long NBA career as a role player. I'm not saying he's going to have some crazy star level upside or anything like that, but I do think that he's a player that in this draft, if you get him, especially him and Johni Broome are two players that I look at in the second round that have a chance to be starters at the NBA level, in my personal opinion. I think that you really have to look at those guys and recognize that they got something there. I think Hugo Gonzalez is a name that you guys may see and hear later on that it's like, hey, where did he go in this draft again? Wow, that's how low he went. I think that those two guys, and Johni Broome is a player that I understand being older, the lack of size sometimes and the lack of real high upside, but the very high floor that he has. I think that's a guy that has tremendous upside when it comes down to this draft process. And if you get him in the second round, I do think that he's a player that's going to have a very long NBA career as a role player, and it ends up paying it. And I don't mean that as a negative. Some people hear role player and they think that you use that as a slight. I'm somebody that I believe most players in the NBA are role players. You have, of course, caliber of role players. You have your very high-end role players, and then you have your stars and your superstars, right? I think Johni Broome can come away from this draft being one of the better role players in this draft in that second round. That he's tough, he rebounds well, he can score, he can do a little bit of everything, right? Not create a lot for himself, but if you have a point guard there, but when you need just that toughness, that tough son of a bitch coming off the bench, I believe that Johni Broome has a great potential to be that in the next level at the NBA, and I think a team that gets him is going to get a hell of a player there. But let me know what you guys think on that. Like I said, a little bit of KD news, but more so draft news and the biggest sleepers in this draft that I feel like just going through and looking at this draft process. But you guys can let me know how you feel on all that down below. Make sure you're following us at NBA Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything basketball related. And I'll see you guys the next time I feel like making a video. Probably tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.